So this right here is a hydrogen fueling pump, which you're going to have to familiarize yourself with if you ever want to own a Hyundai NEXO. And what happens here when it's time to refuel the vehicle, you've got to take this port, which is refrigerated because hydrogen in its granular form, just like cold cuts, is not shelf stable. But anyway, you plug this into the rear quarter panel of the vehicle, and under the force of gravity, that granulated hydrogen, which is kind of like a talcum powder.
Wait a minute, talcum powder?
It flows through here up into the vehicle where it is stored under extreme pressure. We're talking 2.5 psi, folks.
Two psi? Two.
But when it's time to go for a drive, a lot of magic happens. That hydrogen flows into the fuel cell where it's converted into two different things. The first one is biodiesel, which you don't even need. They just let it drip right out the tailpipe as a fine mist. The other thing that it does, it produces heat, which they actually use to boil water and then through a steam turbine generate electricity, which of course powers the vehicle and shoots you right down the road.
To make this interesting, we decided to start out the driving segment on the very same driving segment that I did the race with the skateboarder in the CTSV, and I know this road would scare him, so that's why we're here. With that, first impressions?
First impressions, complete disappointment, with a caveat. I'm disappointed because, well,
this guy's angry.
I'm disappointed because this is like a technological moonshot, right?
Okay.
There's a lot going on underneath the skin of this vehicle, yet it feels completely placid. It's like any normal car you would drive.
Can I just clue you in on how the world works? Or really the purpose of technology, and I would argue the purpose of design. When technology and design are good, you are not supposed to notice them. That is the entire purpose. All we're trying to do is remove the negativity of your propulsion system in your wretched Ford and replace it with something that theoretically is A, cleaner, and B, more renewable. Now the renewable part we'll get to later in this episode about the infrastructure of hydrogen. I got a whole problem with that. But now we know that the technology doesn't get in the way of the driving experience. So
but you see, that's the problem. That's the problem. I want something to bitch about, and I can't. They're taking my job.
So what would this compare this to something that most people would understand?
I mean, at its heart, it's an electric vehicle, right? We just happen to be using hydrogen to generate that electricity.
How we package energy is the difference.
Exactly. To that point, it feels like any other crossover.
MotoMan asked, why did we make the car look this way? Well, I think it's really important to understand that hydrogen fuel cell vehicles need not to be hideous and ugly when we're trying to endeavor to make them stand out and look really cool. So we began with a platform with an SUV. It's the first fuel cell vehicle offered in an SUV configuration. And for us, it was really important to be authentic and genuine to the brand and at the same time be relevant to hydrogen power. So some of the things that we did to the car obviously are aero-oriented, but we did not want the aerodynamic team to really affect what we were doing in design to the extent that it looked purely as an aero car and not like a car that you would desire to drive.
This is like my personal racetrack here, so we shouldn't be doing this. Do not tell Hyundai. Put your foot into it a bit more and see what that motor combined with everything else works.
We're wide open.
Yeah,
assuming it had a throttle.
Please don't kill me. Oh my God, the brakes do work.
We went into friction brakes there, folks.
Okay, you got a nice straight here. Put your foot into it. Stop being ridiculous.
A little bit of flow.
Oh! Santa Maria Madre, you're trying to kill me. Okay, so you have broken pavement. See my test track here?
This is
awesome.
amazing.
You get this in
awesome.
Michigan?
No, we get, imagine a sheet of graphing paper. Lay that over a map, that's Michigan.
Okay, so how did it handle that?
It's a little floaty. The ride is very smooth, though. That's the trade-off, which I like. I like a softer car.
He is the oldest 33-year-old? 34. 34, he's old. So, parking can be a pain in the ass sometimes. Well, things have changed because there's an app for that, even in a fuel cell vehicle. And to get it rolling, we'll hit this button over here. Car is going to look for a spot. Now, we pulled this trick with a BMW a couple of years ago, But, you know, it's been a while since we've done it. Let's try it again. Looking for a spot, looking for a spot. There's special magical sensors everywhere in the car. Found one spot. Let's see if we can find another one here. Ideally, I'm looking for one between two Hyundais so no one sues my ass if this little trick goes wrong. And hopefully it picks up this one here between the two Hyundais and the Orchid Man. And it just... Oh, it's another one! Okay, so I'm going to hit that spot. So now it gives me two choices. I can do this sitting inside the car, or I can do like the super flash thing, stand outside the car and do it remote control. Which one do you think we should do? Now this is where the magic starts. So the car is still running. Technically it's in park, as you saw, but then this is where I play with the handy-dandy remote control and hit this button here. And the car now, the lights are flashing. Wait a minute, you're supposed to go that way. You're not supposed to come towards, the thing is trying to kill me. The Hyundai engineers, Chris Chapman, that's his fault. This car is definitely trying to kill me. Okay, so here we go. By the way, while we're waiting for this to park, isn't this a nice color? Much better than the gray, silverish white over there. I think prettier than the copper. And it's coming back out, and now look at this. I want to point something out. It's doing enough space between the two cars here, and even when I get in front of it, the sensor stopped the car. Now, of course, I can stop this at any time by taking my finger off the remote control, but why stop the fun? Back in, back in, back in, back in. And notice there's enough space between the doors so I can actually open the car. And it just beeped and said we're completely parked. Now, lunch. Okay, so it's near impossible getting this bonehead out into traffic, but I did want to give him the opportunity to drive really what's going to be a city car around town. So we're on PCH, we're going south towards LA, and you were going to experience day-to-day life of California.
Which means traffic and lots of it.
Well, people give us a bad rap, and the reality is the traffic is worse in Atlanta, it's worse in DC, way worse.
Possibly Chicago, too. I hear that's atrocious.
Chicago is really bad, but the only benefit they have over us is their traffic is at predictable times, ours is not.
So, just like in the Kona EV, we've got 3 levels of regenerative braking in here, and I've played around with them, and as before, I do prefer the most aggressive setting because it allows you... It's not as aggressive as it is in the Kona, I think, but it still gives you that sort of one-pedal driving experience. So the car will basically slow down on its own when you lift off the accelerator, which is kind of handy, especially in traffic.
If you were to like have a spectrum, if you were to put like the i3 on one end of the one-pedal spectrum and the new Leaf on the other, where would this sit?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, drive it some more and find out. You're supposed to be the expert.
I haven't driven the i3.
You haven't driven? Oh, because you haven't driven the i3.
Yes.
They don't let you? Jody doesn't let you drive an i3?
Well, I haven't booked one, or so. I try not to book what we've already...
This guy flies to Österreich to drive Aston Martins, but you don't drive i3s. Okay, so how does it compare to the Leaf, then?
I don't know that I've driven the new Leaf either.
Okay, this was a complete and utter failure.
This is a terrible question.
So, okay, you know what? We're going to put a pin in this. I am going to answer that question.
So, all right, if you remember back to the tech review of this 2019 Hyundai NEXO, MotoMan compared it to a Porsche. And at the time, honestly, I thought he was crazy until I discovered this one very neat feature, and I might be coming around. Check this out. It's got a cup holder right on the frickin' dashboard. Now, what Porsche does that remind you of?
Let's work our way through traffic and understand driving dynamics in a 4,000-pound vehicle. Remember, this one's 4,116 pounds because this is the fancy limited.
Wow.
I wanted the one with the sunroof. You didn't.
The lead hat, basically.
Yeah, let's put our foot into it. There is composure. And this is not a perfect road. Sunset, it's very much crowned. And then there's these oddball cement gutters on the side. So let's get off to the side there and see how it handles it. Oh yeah, it's kind of soft, like
it's very soft.
The way you like driving cars.
Yeah, I don't want to be beat up after like a long day at work. Hold on, what just happened in the instrument cluster there? That was kind of cool.
Oh, that's the blind spot, but it's not one of these annoying blind spot things where it like yells at you through the mirror or in the Cadillac how it shakes the seat.
The prostate jiggler.
You have very odd descriptions of things. It has a screen. It's like it looks clever. It's not clever. You are not clever. It has a mirror, or it's the shape of a mirror, but it comes up in the digital instrument panel, and it shows the side of the car.
It's like a video feed.
Yeah, but it's like super HD. It's almost like 4K. Wow. I think more cars should have that. But then again, that's the government holding it back. Because this car could have it today. And who just came out with a car?
Isn't it Audi?
At Paris, yeah. Matter of fact, it was your walk-around video that I learned this. It was the e-tron.
Yep.
Yes.
With the, basically they had it on display with no exterior mirrors because they replaced them with cameras and screens.
Which kind of looked cool.
Yeah.
But that one was screwed up in that the mirror or the screen was in the door.
Yeah, it was down here, well, on the NEXO where the handle is, basically. And I don't feel that I would naturally be looking down there when I'm trying to change lanes.
You wouldn't be looking down there.
The habit is always outside, right?
Yeah.
You're conditioned to look there.
I think that's going to be the same as the Tesla 17-inch screens. I don't know about in Detroit, but here, if you go to any body shop in LA, there are acres of Teslas with front-end damage because no one is looking this way. They're all looking like this. And I think that's what's going to happen with e-trons because people are going to be like this.
Yeah.
Oh my God! So a little bit behind the scenes. On these drives, we usually stop for lunch. And in this case, Harman was kind enough to host us for lunch. These are the folks behind like JBL, the different like fancy audio systems, Infinity, and the different cars that we see. Well, on these programs, we're all given these like name tags. You've never seen me wear them, but I stole Craig's name tag here. And normally it's just like a lanyard. You put it on, you walk around like, oh, hello, Craig, nice to meet you. So you don't forget people's names. You're not rude about not knowing that person's name. Well, in this case, it's more than just a lanyard. This one is a power cable for your phone. So this is the USB part that goes into your computer or the car. And then where's my phone? My phone's back here. And then this one goes into your phone and powers, there's the computer over there. So you could literally charge in your car, do the Apple CarPlay with a lanyard you get at a corporate event. Would it be going too far to say that this is a halo vehicle for Hyundai?
You know, I think it would be because, well, typically halo vehicles are super high performance, but halo vehicles also really demonstrate the breadth and depth of a company's engineering and manufacturing capability, right? They're the pinnacle of what a company can do. And that's kind of what this does, right?
I guess so, but couldn't we argue like, what, 2 or 3 weeks we're going to drive that Veloster in?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be the same thing? Would that be the halo?
But the Veloster's like a compact car. I would say no on the Veloster, and yes on the NEXO, if we're comparing the two.
You know what? I think the Veloster will be way more fun. I know.
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
But you know what? I would go so far as saying this is the halo vehicle of Hyundai. Hyundai brand.
Yes.
Notice I say that, Hyundai brand.
This is sort of Genesis thing floating around.
Actually, I think on the inside, this is way nicer than any Genesis.
Really?
Way nicer than any Genesis, yeah.
So, the NEXO, it looks great. The interior is beautifully done. It's comfortable. It drives well, but there is one major problem.
And whatever would that be?
Well, where do you fuel it?
See, therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
So while you were jetting off to Paris, I was in lowly Miami at the Miami Auto Show.
Okay.
And they had this car there.
All right.
And I'm wondering why on God's, Miami Blue, Porsche, speaking of Miami, there you go. I'm wondering why they would show it at Miami, because you can't buy it in Miami. There's no infrastructure.
There are about 35 filling stations in California right now. They've got 5 more coming online.
In like a year or 2.
And like East Coast would be a perfect market for this car, but they don't have any sort of infrastructure.
Now, I did a little research. They did say they're going to, at least not they, but the corridor between DC and Boston, they're talking about putting an infrastructure in. But how many times have they been telling us it's 5 years away?
For 20 years.
Forget what Craig and I are yammering about. Because yes, there are indeed questions about the cost, the feasibility, and the greenness, if there's such a term, of the production of hydrogen. That's not what today's exercise was about. Today's exercise was about 2 things. Number 1, is this vehicle any good? To answer that, I would say it is the best crossover that Hyundai makes. I would go so far as saying it's the best car Hyundai makes, because in some cases the build quality is better than BMW or Mercedes. And the reason why they do that is because it's a science experiment. And that's really what this exercise is about. You see, it ain't just about Hyundai. 13 companies in total have come together in a public-private cooperation with some governments in order to prove the concept of hydrogen, and not just as an energy source, but a viable business and infrastructure down the road. And that's when you start to put things into perspective. It's not about this generation of NEXO or Clarity. It's not about the next generation or the generation after that. It's really 50 years down the road and creating a business. And yeah, passenger cars probably would be part of that business, but a small part of it. If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, this is more about logistics, heavy vehicles, trucks, trains, that kind of stuff. And that's where we have to look at some of the numbers today. So if you look at just the US, fuel cell fleet total is 4,000. As a basis of comparison, Toyota in 1 year sells 455,000 Toyota Camrys. Then look at the hydrogen side, at least the demand. So that entire fleet in the US is a demand of maybe 2 to 3 tons of hydrogen a day, where the entire demand for all uses of hydrogen, 300 tons a day. So we're not even talking about scratching the surface in today's 2018, 2019 NEXO. Then there's the whole question of where this comes from. Like right now, the 2 biggest sources of hydrogen is from oil production, and there's really no nice way to put this, bullshit. Literally the steam production or processing of methane, bullshit. That is literally what it is. I can get Alex Karros to come on to give you a real description of how this works and me not just trying to be funny. So when you start to frame this little science experiment within those parameters, you see the size of the challenge that Hyundai in this case, but also Toyota, Honda, and others are facing, but more importantly, the time horizon involved. Now, I am just one man, so I'm going to turn this around to you guys. Is this a noble investment of money and 50 years, or is this a fool's errand? Weigh in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I know I ask you questions a lot, but this one I am genuinely interested to see how you guys weigh in. I'm definitely looking for people that work in tech, energy, or cars. With that, I do want to leave you with one thing. This was an unusual episode to work on with a guy like Craig Cole. Great guy, but this is a guy that likes the technology of a 32 Ford and is a farmer. No joke, he really has a farm. Until I see you next time, bis später.